This is Need to Know with Jeff Greenfield, Scott Simon, Ray Suarez, and this week, Maria Hinojosa.
On this edition, we mark Veterans Day with a report on those who are hit uncommonly hard by the current jobs crisis, young military veterans.
How did I get here? How in the world did I get so far down after being in the military?
Also, acknowledging the civilian casualties of war so soldiers can be at peace.
People who should not die get killed. And the soldiers know this. And they have no place to go to do whatever it might be where they can make peace with things they might regret.
And Marcos Villatoro on one mother's constant worry. Next on Need to Know. Thanks for joining us on this Veterans Day weekend. It's great to be here. The politicians in Washington have made little progress on the president's jobs bill, but at least one part of the legislation is moving forward. It's a plan to put military veterans to work by offering businesses tax credits. The administration has also created a Veterans Jobs Bank. These initiatives can hardly come soon enough. It's estimated that 850,000 veterans are unemployed, and that another 1 million service members will be returning to the civilian workforce in the next 5 years. As we discovered during a recent visit to southern New Jersey, some of our young vets who escaped the battlefield with their lives are now enduring lives of hardship back home.
What are you doing? No, we're not getting anything right now.
Brian Fisher is a former U.S. Marine who served several grueling combat tours in Iraq, but his life has only gotten tougher since.
For me, what's going on now, all the financial stress, and that's harder than what I did in the Marine Corps.
Brian is 31 and lives in southern New Jersey. He teaches public school part-time and has joint custody of his 2.5-year-old daughter, Sophie. But with total income of just $1,600 a month, he can't seem to make ends meet.
I was even applying for food stamps and everything like that, too. Maybe eating 1 time a day, maybe 1.5, It's just so I can save that stuff so my daughter can eat and everything. So I was like, I can't live like this.
Out of options and running out of money, Brian's worried he can no longer afford the rent on his small apartment. It's a sadly common story for young veterans in this tough economy. The unemployment rate for these post-9/11 vets is 12%, considerably higher than the national average. And for the youngest vets, those 18 to 24 years old, the unemployment rate is over 20%. These rates have also spurred another alarming trend, a high number of young veterans becoming homeless, an estimated 13,000 according to the federal government.
I sleep right here. I literally, I have this blanket, the sheet on the floor. This isn't even a pillow. This is my coat balled up. But, it's better than being in the shelter right now.
Christina Fitchett is a 24-year-old Navy veteran. Unemployed and with no income whatsoever, she sleeps on the floor of her brother's rented room in a boarding house outside Camden, New Jersey.
And then all my stuff is over here. This is the only place I can really put my stuff at.
Christina may not fit the usual image of a homeless person living on the street, but she's what's known as the invisible homeless, people who, because of their financial situation, have no home of their own. Christina's brother, William Fitchett, is deaf. His disability check covers the rent on his room, but just barely. What's left over goes for groceries and utilities.
Like, literally, this is what me and my brother are eating. So
Other family members have helped out, but William's been her lifeline.
I don't know where I would be. If it wasn't for my brother having his place, I don't know where I would be. Seriously. I never in a million years imagined I would be in this situation. And I scratch my head every day like, how did I get here? How in the world did I get so far down after being in the military? You know what I mean? I don't understand that.
Christina was supposed to deploy overseas on an aircraft carrier in 2006, but she had an infant son. The father was already overseas with the Navy, so she had no one to care for the baby. As a result, she was given a general discharge after 2.5 years of service. But because she didn't fulfill her requirement to the Navy, she doesn't have full access to VA benefits.
So, yeah.
Since her discharge, she's bounced from one minimum wage job to another, at one point spending a week in a homeless shelter.
Oh, here we are. Okay.
She's looking for a new job, but her experience loading munitions onto fighter jets hasn't translated to a civilian job. Given her situation, Christina made the wrenching choice a few weeks ago to send her son and daughter away to Georgia to live with their father.
Well, it was really, really hard. It was, I know recently from them going trick-or-treating and Halloween and stuff, I couldn't be there with them to put the costumes on and to take them door to door. So it's really, really hard. My daughter's a year old, and you know, they're just kids, so they don't understand, you know, mommy's going through something. To her, she's like, okay, my mom left me, she abandoned me, and I don't know why. That's what she, you know, because she's a child, so she doesn't understand why is mom not here.
Summer junior year, instead of being at the beach with my friends, I was in basic training and came to find out that I enjoyed it, and I tried to make it a career.
Like Christina, 28-year-old Army veteran Mark Salmorin is unemployed and is also one of the so-called invisible homeless. For the past year, he's had to live with his mom. Mark served 10 years in the service, including an 18-month tour in Iraq, where he manned an ammunition depot.
The base I was on, we got hit by mortars morning, noon, and night. It was always dangerous. We had sniper threats, we had mortars coming in all sorts of times, day and night.
Mark hoped he'd be a career soldier, but one accident changed that. Mark told us he slipped off a guard tower in Iraq and badly injured his back. But it's been more than just a physical readjustment for this Army vet. It's also been an emotional one. Mark describes coming home from Iraq and suffering months of sleepless nights and sudden mood swings. All this has made his work and living situation harder to handle.
It just feels horrible, you know. It feels like, what the hell purpose do I have? You know, do I want to live this way? You know, would I rather kill myself? What would I rather do than live like this day by day, not knowing if I'm going to have a roof over my head, if I'm going to be able to put food in my mouth, if I'm going to be able to pay my bills?
Many would think that coming out of the military, with its extensive training and sense of self-discipline, would be a big asset in finding a job. But a few vets, including Mark, thought the opposite. They feel employers might be scared off by worries of unseen injuries or soldiers with PTSD. But that hasn't stopped Mark from trying. He recently went to a job fair geared specifically for unemployed vets. This was one of 100 events organized by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Department of Labor, and several veterans groups. It's part of an even larger national push to encourage companies to hire returning soldiers. But for Mark and an estimated 400,000 other post-9/11 vets, one thing that definitely is hurting their job prospects is that they didn't go to college.
All those men and women that are coming back from Iraq.
Mark hasn't found a job after 8 months of trying.
I've been going on interviews, and it's like, oh, we'll call you and let you know, and never heard anything back. And it's like, okay, well, there's been jobs I've gone to second and third round interviews, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll call you and let you know, and I've heard nothing.
But even having a job is no guarantee of security these days. Since he left the Marine Corps, Brian Fisher went to college on the GI Bill, earned his teaching degree, and got this part-time teaching job. But to stay in his apartment, he needs full-time work. In Cash-strapped New Jersey, Brian can't find any teaching job that isn't part-time.
Here's after one of the races that we had where he's running the mile relay. He always gave his all.
Principal Jim Hanshoe is Brian's boss, and he's known Brian for almost 20 years. He was both his track coach and science teacher in high school. He knows Brian's been struggling, but for now, all he can do is try and steer some extra shifts his way.
Well, it's actually 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 8th. Yeah, full day, so. All right, cool. He does an excellent job every day. It's unfortunate right now that the money is not there for him, where he's maybe struggling, which he is. He's an excellent teacher. He really belongs in the educational field as a profession.
Brian's debts have continued to pile up, and this former Marine can't afford the rent anymore. He now has to be out of his apartment by the end of the week.
I just have so much stuff, though, after 31 years.
Brian says he's moved around a lot in the service and in Iraq, so he's used to it. But his biggest concern now is providing a stable home for his daughter.
There is no just me anymore. There is no me. I am Sophie's dad, so, she's my heart. Literally is my heart. So everything I do now is for her, like everything I want to do is just so, all right, I want to get a good job, a career, so I can get my own house and so she can have a place to call home instead of moving in and out of, places here and there.
Brian's uncle offered to let him and Sophie live in the attic of his house. So 2 weekends ago, Brian moved in all their belongings.
Where's Teddy? This will be our area, her room and my room. So for now, it's not that bad because she's already 2. So hopefully as she gets older, I'll be better off. Every day you're waking up and worrying about, okay, I got to do this. What am I going to do this? What am I going to do for Christmas? That's another stress. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do for Christmas for her, what type of presents and stuff like that.
No! Sure you don't want it?
Joe Fisher is Brian's uncle. He says his family comes from a long line of soldiers, and these young veterans deserve more.
Something has to be done. Hopefully Congress and our government will, help out the veterans some way.
The Departments of Veterans Affairs, Labor, and Housing have all launched campaigns to help veterans who are in economic trouble. The VA not only wants to eliminate veteran homelessness by 2015, it's also been focused on preventing it with special programs targeted to those most at risk of losing their homes. It was one of those programs that came through for Christina Fitchett.
Well, today is actually the day that I get to go to Vet Haven, so I'm excited.
Christina was accepted into a transitional housing program for homeless vets run by the state of New Jersey. After 6 months of sleeping on the floor, today's her moving day.
The move, I miss you too. I love my sister, my family. Yeah.
Christina is moving into a facility called Veterans Haven in Winslow, New Jersey. Once she's settled, she'll get regular help finding a job and a variety of counseling as needed.
When America needed them, they served our country with courage.
Even though this is undeniably a good step forward for Christina, she's still out of work, still separated from her children, and living in a temporary shelter.
I'm excited. I'm just ready. It feels really good to have my own keys now to my own place. So yeah, there we go.
Mark Salmorin finally landed a job after 8 months of searching.
He started this past Monday at W.B. Mason, the office supply company. He's glad to be working, but his salary, $12 an hour with benefits, means this 28-year-old still can't afford to move out of his mom's house.
Hopefully within a year, I'll be back on my feet and I'll have my own place. I'll always be looking for something better and just see what happens.
Brian Fisher has now been in his uncle's place for 2 weeks. He told us that unless a full-time teaching job opens up soon, he may have to leave school and go back to the only guaranteed employment he knows: full-time, active military service. But that would mean leaving behind the most precious person in his life.
Granddaddy.
If it doesn't get any better than that, I'm just going to have to do that, I'm just going to either say, okay, well, I'm not doing anything, my daughter's, not being taken care of, well, what should I do? Do I want to be around here and be poor and be homeless, or do I go get a job where it might take me away from her, but I can always send money and make sure at least I know she's being supported? So, I mean, if it's still bad in the next few years, yeah, I'm going back in.
No, I got you. One,
to put the years in that he did in the military, to put the years he did into college, and to come out now and, almost have to be looking for food stamps. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a travesty. You know, everybody will applaud him on the street, but that's not paying the bills, and that's a tough thing.
You ready?
In their Oscar-nominated documentary, Restrepo, Sebastian Junger and Tim Hetherington chronicled the lives of American GIs at a remote outpost in Afghanistan. The GIs were battling an enemy they often couldn't see. Many carry the trauma of combat, and some, says Junger, are burdened by the belief, often unexpressed, that they caused civilian casualties. Tonight, he proposes a way to help them heal.
Soldiers come back, and they know how intense and even thrilling it is to be in combat.
Hey, Roger, detect,
Just the sheer adrenaline rush of combat. You'll never feel that useful, that sure of yourself again. But they also know that war is a shameful thing.
Hit the bottom right of the village.
It's shameful because it kills the innocent in such enormous numbers. You know, one of the ironies of this war in Afghanistan is that because of NATO forces there, this is now the lowest level of civilian casualties in 30 years. And the vast majority of those casualties are caused by Taliban attacks, insurgent attacks. Some of them by us, by accident. But that doesn't matter. One of the soldiers I was with, Brendan O'Byrne, got out of the army and had a very rough time when he came home. We remained close. He used to complain about the reaction he would get from civilians when he tried to talk about his service. He knew that he very well may have killed civilians out there. I mean, there was a lot of firepower out in the Korengal, and, you know, he just understood that that may be something that had happened. And what he wants is some engagement with his friends, with his family, with civilians, where they sort of acknowledge, oh God, that's awful that, you know, that might have happened. Oh God, you know, we need to talk about this. I mean, we sent you over there, and if that happened, it's not your fault, but it's a burden to you, it's your burden, and we need to share that burden. Like, that's the conversation he wants to have with civilians, and they won't have it. And it leaves him all alone with his troubles. And there's thousands and thousands of soldiers like him who have those same troubles, and they don't know where to turn. I had an idea that might address this problem of soldiers, vets, not having a place to process and grieve the things that they regret, that they worry about from their deployment. I wanted to build a monument in Washington, D.C. to civilian war dead from these wars. This monument wouldn't in any way be some kind of self-recrimination by our nation. We would no way be a sort of admission of guilt. It wouldn't be any of those things. It would simply be an acknowledgement that some wars have to be fought. There are just wars, and even in those, civilians get killed. People who should not die get killed. And the soldiers know this. And they come back with this terrible knowledge, and they have no place to go to do whatever it might be where they can make peace with things they might regret. I think that would communicate something very profound to people in the world. We would be the first nation in the world to have such a monument. You know, my guess is that in the 1970s, no one thought that they'd be building a memorial to the soldiers who went to Vietnam, particularly a place of sorrow that you walked into and cried at. That's not the way most nations conceive of monuments. And yet it happened because it needed to happen. And it ended up being an incredibly therapeutic place. I mean, vets go there and they put their hands on that piece of granite and they find the names of their friends and they cry and they somehow process these very complicated emotions. We need that. The soldiers need that. They need a place to go. And I think in this country, it needs to happen. It doesn't mean there'll never be war again. It doesn't mean we'll never use our armed forces again. We may need to. But at least we can do that with the understanding of the central tragedy of war.
This week online, participate in our weekly poll. Do you think veterans should get special consideration over other unemployed people? Let us know what you think and why at the Need to Know site. Finally, another chapter in our American Voices series, which offers a platform for essayists from diverse backgrounds and with equally diverse points of view. From Los Angeles, Marcos Villatoro profiles an immigrant housekeeper whose son fulfilled a boyhood dream to become a soldier.
Aminta cleans my house every other Thursday. It takes her 6 hours. I work at home, so we always chat about our kids. And I always make sure to ask about her son, David, an American soldier.
¿Está en Afganistán?
Afghanistan.
Sí.
Under Bush, he was in Iraq, she says. Now with Obama, Afghanistan.
Sí, me siento muy triste porque está lejos y me da miedo que esté allá.
Yeah.
Porque está muy peligroso.
You can hear it in her Guatemalan Spanish, a military mom who's gone from fear to anger to exhaustion. David's not an officer, and she knows that's not good. She squeezes the mop into the laundry room sink. And why are we there? Why don't we send our troops to Mexico? God knows the drug runners are killing people right and left on that border. And that way, well, at least he'd be closer to home. Now, I know a little bit about conflict. I lived in Nicaragua during that country's war. Soldiers and their AK-47s walk in the streets, troops coming into a village after a battle in the mountains, dropping themselves like exhausted carcasses on the dusty plaza ground. Civilians killed weekly by the dozens. Now, I was no soldier. I witnessed the war as a civilian, but it was enough to make me swear that my children would never go to war. But I'm in a position to say that. I am now part of the Los Angeles multicultural bourgeoisie. Not rich, but certainly not poor. My kids have choices. They can go to college and not depend upon the military for a job. Aminta cleans my house before a dinner party, where my friends and I will talk about the war. We'll also chew over what Washington should do about the homeless and the broken education system and the unemployed. Aminta's got a job. She's got 14 jobs. After my house, 13 others in 1 week. But she still worries about employment. During a recession, the first luxury many families cut is the cleaning lady. But it's David who's her major worry. I see it in her eyes as she drags a cloth over my bookshelves. She leaves my house sparkling. But her mind is 8,000 miles away, walking alongside a son who, like Aminta, is cleaning up someone else's mess.
This is Need to Know.
That's it for this edition of Need to Know. Please stop by pbs.org and visit the Need to Know website for additional reporting, opinion pieces, and of course our online poll. This week, you'll also find 5 things you need to know about the European debt crisis, including why the financial mess in the Eurozone should matter to you. Next week, Ray Suarez will be here, and we'll be asking the question, could drastic cuts to our military budget actually make for stronger national security? I'm Maria Hinojosa. Thanks for joining us.